You and I both know that the game is changing, and if we can utilize LinkedIn more effectively, we could tend to be a little bit more successful. On today's episode, my guest, Tony Restell, is going to give you strategies that you can implement today to help land your next 3 clients. You're going to love it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And as I mentioned in the teaser, today we're going to give you some strategies that you can implement right now to be able to help land your next 3 clients. My guest, Tony Restell, is the founder of an organization called socialhire.com, and you can find out more about them in the show notes. Now, Tony helps clients all across the globe to utilize LinkedIn and utilize social strategies to be able to improve their marketing and their sales. The principles that he's going to share with you today are going to be specifically designed for you as a sales rep that you can utilize to be able to land your next 3 clients. Listen, if you're not already watching, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as subscribe to this podcast. Please go ahead and do so. We'll make sure to notify you every time we have a new episode dropping. Now, if you have been listening for a while, please take this episode and share it with one other person so they can benefit from it as well. I'd greatly appreciate that. Let's dive in and hear some of the things that Tony has to share. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks ever so much for having me, Donald. Pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this. You and I chat a little bit ago, and we framed out this episode, and I'm excited about it because social media is one area that many sales professionals, I see folks talk about it all the time. Like you need to share content. I didn't quite know what they were talking about per se, Tony, until it happened to me as a sales rep when I started to share. And I was like, holy moly, people actually know about me before I even call them. Or they're willing to have conversations with me because I'm known in our little space. But talk about you for a second there, about your experiences. I bragged about you a little bit in a teaser. Tell us a little bit more about what you do. I know you have a book around the topics as well, right? Around social media.
So I run a social media agency for B2B businesses. Most of our clients are companies like management consultancies, training companies, technology platforms, recruitment businesses. So all looking to sell to a B2B audience, ideally as high up the food chain as we're able to get them talking to people. And prior to that, I built and sold an internet business to a newspaper group here in the UK. Very heavily focused on sales there as well. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Oh man, this is perfect. Right up the alley then. Let's talk about this as far as like sharing content on social media going into 2023, as this episode is, going out to this early part of the year here, and people are taking advantage of, or why should people even care about sharing content on social media right now, going into the climate we have and into 2023? What are some of your takes on this?
Well, if I could start with one thing, Donald, which is I'd really like to pinpoint that we've only ever seen B2B sales professionals get results from social media and from LinkedIn in one of 2 ways. And the first of those is really trying to become a celebrity in your field. So you are, one of the most well-known people on LinkedIn in whatever niche market it is you operate in. And obviously when we go onto LinkedIn, we see our feed filled with people like that because LinkedIn shows us the posts that are getting, the huge amounts of engagement and loads of comments and reshares. And so we all think, if only I could replicate that myself, then, I'd have a flood of inquiries coming through. And that is true to a degree. But what you don't see on LinkedIn is how many people are trying to replicate that and just not getting anywhere. If you use some of the search functionality on LinkedIn, you can actually go and look at all of the posts of your connections or all of the posts of people in a recruitment business, for example. And what you see when you do that is a massive long stream of posts, most of which have got almost no engagement and therefore no visibility for the person who's posted. So That is one way that you can certainly generate, leads and inquiries through LinkedIn, but it's actually the more risky one, because if you're going to pull that off, you're going to be the exception in your market, because most people don't. What we like to focus on is something that is much more predictable and scalable and comes down to consistency of effort. And I guess that comes from, my door-to-door sales background many, many, many years ago, where, it was drilled into us that it's all about the numbers and it's all about improving your conversion rates between your numbers. And if you do enough of the right things and you improve over time, then you're going to get a pretty known outcome from that. And LinkedIn is no different for sales professionals. So we really focus with our clients on growing their accounts, but really focusing on a much more targeted audience. So, if you think of your, I don't know, top 100 or top 500 ideal clients, you just need relationships with people in each of those businesses in order to smash your sales targets for the next year. You don't need the whole of LinkedIn to have seen you. You just need to be, building a relationship with those people. So we focus broadly on grow, build trust with that audience, and then figure out how to convert that audience into people, who want to have a call with you, who want to meet up for a coffee, however it is you go about doing your sales.
How do I go about doing that as far as like growing that audience though?
Well, I mean, LinkedIn really changed as a platform about 4 years ago now. They relaunched the site. And if you remember, Donald, the old days when you wanted to connect with someone, you had to say how you know that person. So you had to fill in a form that said, I went to college with this person, or I used to work with them at this company. And to be able to, proceed with the connection request, you actually had to, have some reason for connecting to them. And then LinkedIn relaunched the site. They got rid of that and they allowed everyone to have 30,000 connections, 30,000. So there's no longer any pretense that LinkedIn is a site where you only network with people that you've worked with closely before. They've opened it up to be much more of an open networking platform. So one of, in terms of growing, if you're an individual business developer rather than a company, it is literally about proactive networking, searching effectively on LinkedIn to find your ideal client targets, and then having some good connection request wording to maximize the chances that the right people choose to connect with you. If you get those things right, if you get the targeting right, and you test some different versions of your connection request message, see which one does best for you, then your growing your network becomes very predictable. Okay, every quarter I'm going to be able to add this many of my ideal clients as connections, because you're just replicating what's worked the previous quarter. Does that make sense?
It sure does. And one thought that that this fostered or stimulated was knowing what to put in that connection request. But I want to go back in to talk it real quick though about the searching. I mean,
Yes.
we can go to the filter. I don't need to have Navigator. This is all what you're talking about. It's like from just general LinkedIn profile, being able to just search, find my ideal, and sending them a connection request, correct?
That's correct. I mean, if you've got Sales Navigator, there are some extra filters in there that help you to be, even more targeted in your searching. And if you're in an organization that is paying for you to have it, then I would definitely advise that you take full advantage of that. But yeah, a lot of this can be done from a regular LinkedIn account. Most of our clients don't have Sales Navigator, so it's certainly not dependent on you having Sales Navigator. I think within Sales Navigator, there's a couple of things that are really useful. One is being able to search by size of company. So if you are a business that is selling only to fast-growing startups, or you're a consulting firm that only sells to large corporates, then obviously being able to narrow down your searches to people in certain sizes of business is useful. And then the other thing is being able to exclude certain results. So Sales Navigator makes it easier for you to say, I would like to exclude people from this industry in my search result, or exclude people from this geography, for example.
Yeah, makes sense on that. What do you see as some great messaging, or what should I have? Like, what's the? I know the LinkedIn, like the generic stuff is like people send all the time, and I think it's maybe it's just me, but I think it's just kind of like hogwash. But it's like, hey, I see that we have mutual connection. I want to connect with you here. I feel like there's got to be something better than that that's going to compel people. What are you, from your experience? What are some things that sellers should be adopting or adding to those connection request messages to
Absolutely.
increase the odds of people accepting?
Can I say that one of the best things to do on LinkedIn is think, if I were at a trade show or a conference and I was trying to strike up a relationship with this person in person, how pushy would I be? How would I go about doing that? And then replicate that on LinkedIn. Would you walk up to someone in the coffee break at an expo and say, hi, I'm Tony. Can I tell you about how I could help you ramp up your sales with social media? We should probably figure out a time when we can have a proper conversation about that. I mean, you would never open a conversation with someone in person like that. And LinkedIn's no different. So resist the temptation to try and sell from the first connection request. All we really want to do with the connection request is get the right people to accept, because that opens the door then to being able to do loads of other things afterwards. And then I like to drop in a question as well, just to try and spark some conversations starting right from the point when someone first accepts a connection request. And I mean, I've had clients get their first sales calls booked 24 hours after starting to do this. I'm not saying that that's typical, because it's not. But if you drop in a good question, then that will start to uncover opportunities for you. So let's say, for example, Donald, that I was looking to strike up relationships with partners of consulting firms. I would send a message that says something like, it would be great to connect. Here on LinkedIn, you'll see me sharing insights about how consulting firms are winning client interest through social media. Out of interest, is that something you're doing much of in your firm? Question mark. It'll be great to connect in any case. And that's about the length of the message that you're allowed. You're restricted to 300 characters. But notice there, I haven't said at all that I run a social media agency. I haven't talked about what the services are that they could buy from me or how we could help them. I've phrased it all in terms of what makes me a valuable connection for them. If you connect with me, you'll start to get to see some insights on how other consulting firms like yours are generating client interest through social media. Yeah, who wouldn't want that? And then the question at the end, are you experimenting with this much in your business out of interest, or something along those lines? What you'll find is most people won't respond to that question, because loads of people are going into LinkedIn, they've got 50 outstanding connection requests, and they're just quickly going through and accept, decline, or they're doing it on their smartphone, and it's not convenient for them to respond at that point. But what you will find is that 5 or 10% of people do respond to that message. So now, if you imagine you're getting a couple of hundred new connections each month, and if even 5 or 10% of people respond to that, that's 10, 20 conversations starting each month where someone's responding and saying, hey, Tony, actually, we haven't done nearly as much with that as we should be. We probably ought to find a time to chat about that at some point. So, those kinds of conversations start right from the connection request being accepted, provided you go in softly.
Love that. All right, so now we know how to connect. We're getting this, and one of the thoughts I wrote down here was just make those connection requests more engaging. Don't necessarily need to be the robotic thing. Building trust, though, how do I go about doing that relatively at scale with a platform like LinkedIn?
So in large part, this just comes down to you being seen as being expert and helpful and credible in whatever it is that you do. So if you've got, those 500 contacts you've built up at your ideal clients, and each time they go onto LinkedIn, they start seeing things from you that show you're an expert in your field. That starts taking you from being someone they know nothing about to someone that they start perceiving as being an expert in this field, because you're consistently sharing insights and wisdom that they find beneficial. And you couple that with having a headline on LinkedIn that reinforces and reminds them what it is you do and how you help companies. So then, if people see from me, a couple of times a week, they see something through from me that's a tip about how to get better results from social media, or here's a case study of how a consulting firm's achieved this, or here's whatever it might be. And alongside that, they also see my headline that reminds them what it is I do. Oh yeah, Tony, he's that guy who helps B2B small businesses with generating client interest. If you go down that approach, then over time, you start having more and more of these people know who you are, view you as an expert. And then ideally, you're going to also try and engage with people on the platform as well. So, you might be jumping in and answering some of the questions that they've got on LinkedIn, or certainly if people comment on your own post, then you want to go in and, keep that conversation flowing. And then the last part, Donald, is about knowing the platform so that you do things that get you seen. So, for example, right now, polls on LinkedIn get seen about 10 times more than a regular LinkedIn post. So if you can just figure out as a salesperson, what would be some really interesting data for people in my niche market to get to see, because they're a connection of mine. And if you can think through those questions. So, for example, one I did recently was, it'd probably be really interesting for us all to get an understanding of when are people most likely to be on LinkedIn if you're trying to figure out, when you should post and how often you should post. And I just had, the 4 options. Are you most likely to be on here before the working day, during office hours, in the evening, or at weekends? And that provides a snapshot of data that for anyone who's trying to get better results from what they're doing on social media, which is obviously who I'm networking with, companies who want to do that, then that's a valuable piece of data. And so if you think about that cleverly, then you can really start providing value to your network that reinforces that you're the expert in this subject matter, and that they want to take part in the polls because they want to get access to the data that's behind it.
I love that. Yeah, polls have been like it's just fascinating how many people see those. You throw up a poll, like if I throw up a poll, it's like within minutes, all these engagements, and it's like flies to like food or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very fascinating. So I encourage people to take advantage of that. I want to do the last piece though, and I'm sure that's where a lot of people are concerned now. It's like now I'm building trust with folks, and I've built an audience. How do I convert that audience into actually business or opportunities?
So what I would really encourage you to do here is to think about how can you get some call time or a meeting with someone that isn't directly asking to pitch your services. If you build up trust with those 500 people, and then you message all 500 and you say, I'm looking to fill up my calendar with appointments with people who'd be interested in learning about ABC. How's your calendar looking for the next couple of weeks? The response you're going to get on that is going to be terrible.
Yep.
Because people are being pitched that kind of thing day in, day out. And so the instinctive reaction is to reject and say no to that. Whereas if you flip the switch and say, okay, well, how could I get on a call with them that would get us chatting about, the kind of ways that our business can help them? Then you get very high take up. Okay. And typically here, we see between 5 and 12% of people will say yes at the first time of asking uh, to this kind of approach. So then if you run those numbers and you say, okay, well, I've got 500 new connections during the quarter who are my ideal types of client decision makers, and now I reach out to them to look to get them on a call or meeting me or whatever it might be, and 5 to 12% of them say yes. Well, do the maths there. That's starting to become a significant number of calls and meetings with your ideal clients just through what you're doing on LinkedIn. And obviously that then compounds over time, because next quarter you've got more connections than you had this quarter. And the quarter after you've got more connections than, and so on and so forth. I just share one example there. I mean, this is where you put your creative hat on and you think, okay, what could we do here? What I've done for my business very successfully is do video interviews with business owners. So literally we would jump on a short call, only 5-10 minutes interview like this, and I'll put 2 or 3 questions to them, create a video that they can then share on LinkedIn. For lots of them, that's a great outcome because they've been wanting to do more with video, but they've never quite got round to it. So me rocking up and offering that, they can have this on a plate is really easy for them to say yes to. But the outreach to them is saying, you may have seen I've been doing some video interviews with business leaders on LinkedIn. I wondered about getting you involved. Any chance we could jump on a quick call sometime in the next week and talk it through? And because that appeals to, their ego, and it's not me directly trying to pitch them what it is we do, lots of people say yes to that. But then when I get onto the call with them, by that point, they've all looked at my profile and studied what it is I do. And actually loads of those calls turn into sales calls without me even having to do anything. We'll jump on that call. They'll say, hey, Tony, I'd be interested in hearing about this video interview idea, but actually I was looking at your profile, and what I would really like to come away from this call understanding is how can your business help us, and what would it look like, and how long would the engagement be, and it literally turns into a sales call off the bat. And I'm going to say actually one other example there, Donald, because I don't want anyone to think that
Sure.
I've just given an example of our business and they're going, oh, well, that doesn't relate to my business. So, another one would be consulting firms. In the consulting industry, the typical approach is to try and produce amazing thought leadership. So you produce reports, data, trend analysis that shows your consultancy is the absolute expert at this particular, whatever it is your consultancy does. And then the idea is once you've published that, you then, share that as extensively as you can on social media, and you hope that enough of the right people see it, that then the phone starts ringing and there's lots of client inquiries coming. Well, we flip that on its head and we say, right, you're a consulting firm, you're going to go and do produce a new piece of thought leadership. Why don't you reach out now to your ideal clients and say you're going to be producing this piece of thought leadership, and you'd love to get the expert input of some people who are in the industry and experiencing these problems firsthand. And so, if you think of the last years, there have been huge supply chain challenges, for example. So a supply chain consultancy could have produced a thought leadership report about how to overcome all the supply chain challenges. But much better than that, why not contact all the supply chain directors in all the big companies and say, we're going to be producing this report and we'd love to hear about the kinds of challenges you've been facing so that we make this report as authoritative as possible. And then you get a whole series of calls with your ideal clients opening up to you about the problems that they're facing. I mean, you can imagine it's not difficult to see how that very easily turns into a sales conversation, even though that wasn't what it initially started out as. Does that make sense?
This, man. It sure does. So the idea there, start conversations, get them to connect with you, and then from there it can go, because the alternative of just doing a pitch like most people do ain't gonna work. So it makes sense. I love that. 3 simple ideas, 3 simple stuff that any seller who's listening to this call can apply and try it. I love that. I know we can probably go on for like another hour and go deeper into some of these, but I want folks to connect with you on that. If folks are interested in learning about you or some of the content you produce, or to just continue the conversation and discussion with you, how did it go about doing so?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So you're very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, Tony Restell, and also our website is Social Hire. So that's social-hire.com. But just look up Social Hire on Google, that'll take you to us. And we do have on there the opportunity to book in for a consultation call with us if you want to just brainstorm what kind of an impact could this have for my specific business, and what might those numbers look like in terms of how many connections I might be able to make, and what kind of end result that might generate for us. Very happy to jump on calls with people and talk that through. So yeah, either of those channels would be perfect, Donald.
Listen, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today and for bringing your wisdom and your insights. Truly appreciate this, Tony.
Pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Hey, that was Tony Restell. If you have not done so already, go back to the show notes. Check out Tony. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you heard about him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast. I know he'll be pumped, and I would be grateful that you're actually going out and networking, because that's what it's all about, man. Now, listen, you can utilize LinkedIn on a more effective a way, because we know that emails alone are not cutting it anymore. You got to do a little bit more, and that's where we see tools like LinkedIn coming into the game. And I encourage you to take advantage of that social approach. Find out more from Tony. Also, you can check out our offerings when it comes to LinkedIn. We are a big fan of LinkedIn as well, and it's been a great tool to help us when it comes to prospecting. As always, check out our sponsors. They have amazing offers for you and for your team. As always, we want you to find more of your ideal customers, know what to say, and we want you to be able to close more deals. Our job is simple here at TSE: help you to build pipe and help you to convert that pipe. Simple. If you need help with that, that's what we're doing with this podcast. I appreciate you. Thanks so much, Tony. As always, go out and do big things.